So, Jurassic World Dominion. This is the movie I have a lot of mixed thoughts about. I really didn't care for the last Jurassic World that came out, Fallen Kingdom. I thought that movie was all over the place as far as tone goes and everything like that. And the trailers for Jurassic World Dominion, they didn't really do a whole lot to sell me on the movie, although I still thought to myself, it'll probably still be a fun theater going experience. So went and saw it in the theaters, pretty packed house, and my thoughts on the movie are kind of mixed. This is probably the most uneven Jurassic Park movie in the entire franchise. Movies where the consensus is that the movie's not too great, like Jurassic Park 3. I wouldn't really consider that movie to be uneven. It's definitely not as good as other ones, but it's kind of the same throughout the entire movie. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which I really didn't like, I also wouldn't really consider that movie to be too uneven. But this movie right here, Jurassic World Dominion, is just all over the place because for every single high that there is, there's just another low to kind of contrast with it. And it's sad to say because Colin Trevorrow comes back to direct this movie, and the action itself is filmed well in this movie. But the problem is that most of the action that takes place has like no soul. There's just like you don't really care what's going on. And in the trailer, you see the sequence where Chris Pratt's on the motorcycle and he's running away from the Velociraptor. You see two dinosaurs right there, and the shot looks cool. And when you go and see this movie in the theater, especially in IMAX, the entire thing is filmed in IMAX. That whole chase scene looks amazing, but you don't care about anything that's going on because it just lacks any sort of soul. There's no tension to be had in this movie. And in fact, it's to the point where I feel like that entire scene probably could have been cut out. I mean, I understand why it wasn't. It makes good for the trailer, but in the movie itself, it lacks any soul. There's nothing to it. And a lot of that is because there's hardly any tension in this movie. And a lot of that also has to come down to this is the sixth Jurassic Park movie. And it's like, how many times can you really have tension when it comes to dinosaurs? I mean, the first movie does a great job, especially when the T-Rex is first kind of breaking out of the fence. And it's all this build up, and then it finally, the build up pays off. And I feel like in every Jurassic Park movie since, they kind of realize that people aren't scared of dinosaurs, so they kind of try to skip past any tension. They just go, okay, straight action, straight action. The problem with doing that and just going straight action is that our characters on the screen, their faces, they have fear in their face. And if you're going to do that with the characters, if the characters themselves are going to be fearful of what's going on, you got to have the audience in some aspect be fearful of what's going on. And being fearful of what's going on in Jurassic World Dominion, no audience member feels any sort of tension, and especially when it comes to the characters, because at no point in this movie do you feel like any of our characters are going to be in any sort of danger. You always feel like our characters are going to be safe. And the other glaring issue in this movie is the movie's length. The movie is 2.5 hours long, and it does not need to be 2.5 hours long. It's way too long. They should have cut down some of the action sequences. I personally think, like I said, with Chris Pratt on the motorcycle, that chase sequence looks cool, especially in IMAX. Probably should have just been cut out. There's really no reason, I feel like, for that scene to really have been in the movie. And so you cut that scene out, you kind of tighten up the movie a little bit more, and I feel like the movie would be a little bit better paced, at least in that aspect. So when I say this movie is uneven, and I talk about the action, not all the action in this movie is terrible. You do feel some of the action, especially, I feel like, towards the third act of the movie. The third act of the movie is when you really start to get all the legacy characters, and then our new characters really actually start meeting each other, and they're not off doing their separate things. And that was one of my issues when they first brought back legacy characters like Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum back into this movie, is because it felt like at first they were only in this movie to like serve the plot. They were just there, and it was like, okay, they're going to do this, but they're only really doing this, and it really only makes sense for them to do it so they can eventually get from A to B. And I was like, okay. I wasn't the biggest fan of that because it's like they really don't have much to do until you get later into the movie, but it's fine. It was nice seeing them on the big screen again. When you see Sam Neill and Laura Dern and they first meet up again, and you haven't seen them since Jurassic Park 3, and even Jurassic Park 3, they had such a short interaction. It was really cool seeing them together again and with dinosaurs and everything, kind of like what we saw in the first Jurassic Park movie. So there is some fun to be had in this movie. There is some cool action in this movie. And our returning cast like Chris Pratt, Bryce Dallas Howard, and then those two, they do a great job in this movie. And that's one of the best things I feel like about the Jurassic World trilogy as a whole is even in Fallen Kingdom, which I don't like, Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard are likable characters, or characters are good enough to basically make the movies watchable. And so in Jurassic World Dominion, the cast really, I feel like, elevates this movie beyond anything else. And Colin Trevorrow does his best to really sell the action sequences, which most miss, but some really do hit. And isn't really until the third act of the movie that most of the action sequences really start to hit. So that was, to me, that was almost like the first two acts of the movie were very miss, and then the third act of the movie, it all comes full circle, and the movie actually becomes rather good. And another thing I actually really enjoyed about this movie's story, and I don't want to give too much away about this because in none of the trailers that they really showed about this, there's something to do with scientists and everything that really has to. It's like almost like a commentary on stuff that we see going on in the news here in our real life or in our normal world. So it's kind of cool to kind of see that sort of commentary here in a Jurassic World movie. And I thought the writing as far as that aspect goes, and kind of the villain that we see in this movie, I thought he was really cool as a villain. And I thought the whole aspect of like how science, the commentary on science, and how we can possibly go too far with it, and how kind of big companies can kind of overstep their boundaries and maybe hurt the little guy and stuff. It's kind of stuff like that that I really enjoyed about this movie as far as the story aspect goes, just because I like that commentary and stuff on what's happening kind of now in the modern world. But ultimately, I feel like the main reason Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which I didn't like, and now here Jurassic World Dominion, which I did like more, and I did actually enjoy my time watching in the theaters, I feel like the reason these movies are becoming uneven, and it's just, it almost feels like Jurassic Park as a whole has just run its course. And it felt that way back in the original trilogy after, I mean, listen, I like Jurassic Park 3, but it felt like Jurassic Park 3 was a nice ending. And then they come out with Jurassic World, which is nice. I do like Jurassic World. I have rewatched Jurassic World. Then you got Fallen Kingdom, which I don't think I'm going to ever rewatch again. I've seen it once. I don't have any desire to rewatch it again. And then you have this movie, Jurassic World Dominion, which I also don't know if I have any desire to rewatch again. And I feel like I'm doing nothing but crapping over this movie, but I really don't think it's a bad movie. I look at where we came from with Jurassic Park to where we are now, and to how Spielberg was able to, even in movies like Lost World, which a lot of people have critiques about, he was able to create tension. He was able to think that, to make you believe that these dinosaurs actually existed. And in these new movies, there's not a whole lot of practical effects. There's some, and so it's like all visual CGI, and none of the dinosaurs really feel like they're there. And I think that also adds to the aspect of why there's no tension, and that also like kind of lessens the action at the same time. And so with Jurassic World Dominion being the end of the Jurassic World trilogy, I feel like from here we're good on these Jurassic Park movies for a while. I like some of the stuff this movie did. I do think it's a fun movie to watch with family, friends in the movie theater, especially in a packed theater. There is joy to be had with this movie. To me, the depressing part just comes from the fact that this movie is so uneven that my time watching it in the theater, there were a lot of highs, but there was also a lot of, oh man, could this movie please just get on with what it's trying to get on with, or when there was an action sequence, I was almost getting bored through the action sequence. I'm thinking back to some of the old Transformers movies where there was just so much action, and you just didn't really care what's going on, that you're almost bored. And some of that happened in this movie, and that's unfortunate because the action is filmed well. It just lacks any soul. And so I'm looking forward to this franchise taking a break. I desperately think it needs one. I think this movie tried its best to kind of go in a direction that we haven't necessarily gone in before, since this isn't really a movie about dinosaurs escaping a park and running havoc on the American people, or I mean on the worldwide people. It's a movie about dinosaurs already living amongst us, and then how that, and the problems and turbulations that can bring to society, and what happens when companies can overstep their boundaries and stuff. So it's kind of a story like that, but the cast really elevates the movie. Ultimately, I do recommend seeing Jurassic World Dominion in the theaters. I do think it's a fun movie. I definitely think it's better than Fallen Kingdom. But at the end of the day, I'm still just a bit disappointed that Jurassic World Dominion is kind of where we're going to end off. I look at where we started once again with Jurassic Park, and I look at here with Jurassic World Dominion, and it's just fallen from such a cliff. But at the end of the day, they're still fun to be had in the movie theater. But ultimately, I just don't ever see myself watching Jurassic World Dominion again. But anyway, if any of you guys have seen Jurassic World Dominion, let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below. And like always, I hope to see you back in my next review.